Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
Now, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional. But why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing socio-economic issues that I would want to address with you.
In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bub Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bub Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
I've spoken to one of the cruise lines leadership this morning, and I must tell you, the way in which people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in ordinary people and in Grenada and in Dominica, St. Lucia and Antigua have responded to put people in their homes, strangers, bring tears to my eyes. I love this Caribbean. I want to thank the minibus operators who have thus participated, and I'm asking all of them to participate. I know your bus costs money and so on, and you'll be paid. Don't worry about that. I want you to help. And today, with the explosive eruption, I want you to help in moving the people and persons who have private vehicles to help also. And in some places, if you go into a shelter, you may not end up at the shelter permanently, because that might also be a clearing house for you to go to a hotel or a guest house, or maybe to go somewhere else. Of course, large numbers of persons still would have to stay in the shelters. But the more we get persons who can go to homes and who can go into the hotels and the guest houses, whether here or outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for persons who may wish to go, that we should do so.
And welcome back, folks, to our special coverage of the ongoing volcanic and humanitarian crisis that is currently unfolding in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the Eastern Caribbean. As we continue to monitor the latest developments on the ground in St. Vincent, here is what we know at the 11 o'clock hour. Just before going on air, there was another explosive event with power outages and water supplies cut off. NEMO, that's the National Emergency Management Organization of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is urging people to be careful on the roads, which have become treacherous as a result of the ash flow. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said that water supplies to most of the island has been cut off, and its airspace to local, regional, and international travel closed because of the smoke and thick plumes of volcanic ash that is currently moving through the atmosphere. And we do have a meteorologist here, former meteorologist, who will be coming to give us some context with respect to the atmospherics as well. Also, we know that the Barbados Defense Force deployed a contingent as part of the regional security system, humanitarian assistance, and disaster response mission to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The RSS, they're on their way to St. Vincent right now in the aftermath of the eruption. Also in Barbados, the Chief Medical Officer, Kenneth George, is advising residents to stay indoors. And he's indicating that this is to protect yourselves and your family, unquote. People on the island of St. Lucia have also been warned to expect a reduction in air quality because of the persistent ash flow in the atmosphere, because of the harmful gases that may be potentially making it harder to breathe for people with conditions such as asthma. And on that note, I wish to take the opportunity to welcome my first two guests this morning. I have Her Excellency Ambassador Luan Gilchrist, who is the ambassador of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, accredited to the Organization of American States and to Washington, D.C., as well as Pastor Robert McBarnett of the St. Matthias Charities. Pastor, it's so good to see you. I worked with you covering your charity and the work that your charity does in New York. So we're meeting under these conditions, but it's good to have you here, Pastor.
Thank you.
Okay, and so let me begin with you, Ambassador. With respect to your role as the accredited ambassador representative to Washington, D.C. and the United States and the OAS, what kind of mobilizations have been taking place so far? Obviously, we know that this is still a fluid and moving situation, but what can you tell us?
Thank you, Kellon, and thank you for hosting me on this show this morning so that I can provide some information to the public at large. And I thank you also for the attention that you are paying to the volcanic eruptions in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As the ambassador of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to the United States and the permanent representative to the Organization of American States, my role and the role of the office is to firm up contacts with our partners in the United States and at the Organization of American States. Specifically, at the Organization of American States, there is a committee, the Inter-American Committee on Natural Disaster Reduction, which generally provides support to member states during times of natural disasters such as this is. So we are in touch with the chair of that committee, and the response action is being activated as we speak. Further than that, at a meeting of the Permanent Council of the OAS on Wednesday, we hope to present to all member states a snapshot of the situation on the ground in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. With regard to the bilateral aspect, that is the interface with the United States administration, we have been in touch with certain representatives of Congress, certain Congress people, and they have pledged their support and solidarity, as they always do. We will be in touch directly with the State Department to update them on the occurrences in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you know that we are friends of the United States and we form part of their third border. So any activity in our island, in our region, has some impact on the hemisphere. So that in a nutshell is what we have been doing. We are maintaining the interface on behalf of our government.
Now, locally, we are in the Washington, D.C. area, as you know. Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, the DMV area. What can people do? Obviously, I'm sure you're still fleshing out what those plans would look like. But people in this area, or even people in the New York area, I'm going to bring in Pastor McBarnett shortly as he does competent and amazing work with his charity up there. But what can we do in this area to support? And when the call comes out, what can we expect? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. With respect to support and assistance to St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the DMV area, let us say that our coverage is really the United States. So we have in the New York area specifically an organization called the SVG Relief Inc. Now that was set up following the 2013 trough event in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 2013-2014. So they have provided assistance in the past, and they have actually dispatched some relief supplies to St. Vincent and the Grenadines already. In addition, we have a recently established platform which is called SVG DRIP. The acronym represents St. Vincent and the Grenadines Disaster Relief Initiative Platform. It is a platform intended to bring together diaspora groups in North America, in the United Kingdom, in the Caribbean, for providing relief support to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And added to that, our government has established an account through which monetary donations can be made. And that information will be published variously by this evening. And I must say to you that in the New York area, for SVG Relief Inc., there are certain drop-off points. However, for SVG DRIP, there is an Amazon registry, an Amazon link, which contains the items of immediate need, and donors are free to purchase, to click on the link and to select what items they would like to donate, and the shipping address is also embedded in that link. And so those are the two facilities set up at this point, official facilities set up at this point, in addition to the government's, the Accountant General's banking details, which will also be made available to those wishing to provide support.
And Ambassador, I would certainly welcome your furnishing that information to us here at the Bub Report, and we will be more than happy to share it. And at this point, let me bring in Pastor McBarnett. Pastor McBarnett, it was so good to hear from you. Actually, I called you. You know, but you know, in the past, you've worked with the St. Matthias Charities, Pastor. But before we get into your relief efforts and what you're organizing in the New York area, you also experienced the 1979 eruption. So you can bring some context. So could you tell us, first of all, which part of St. Vincent you hail from?
I'm hailing from Dixon Village in the country on the windward side.
Oh, and would that be part of the red zone?
That's correct.
The red zone.
That's
okay.
Correct.
So take us back to 1979, literally a couple of days short of the anniversary of the eruption. What was that experience like for you?
In 1979, it was Friday the 13th. It was a Good Friday. I remember receiving a call. They called in, and I was sleeping, and they woke us up, said that the volcano is erupting. And we got up, and by being in the red zone, we're able to look into the vicinity of the volcano and can see any plume or anything. And folks in that area tend to hear it rumble sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a youth hearing the song from the volcano and seeing the ash, seeing the plume from the explosion. Mm-hmm. So you just have to get out as fast as you can with whatever you have on. I remember I have to try to change my pajamas because I was sleeping, and then just keep running. And at that point, you try to get as far as possible. And then the plume, you know, the smoke will be over you, the ashes. We had ashes fall, but what I'm hearing here now from folks who is on the ground, this is nothing compared. I mean, 79 would make this look like if it's nothing in comparison to what's going on here. I'm seeing report, folks are heaping up the ashes, and they're showing you the heap of ashes like if you are shoveling to mix concrete or something. And some folks are telling me in some areas it look like they got up to 6 inches of ashes right now on the ground, and ashes is still falling right now. There are lots of areas without current. We have folks on the ground who are working in shelter right now, and at this point they have no current. They have power shortage there. So this is much further worse. I'm hearing from folks in Grenada who are reaching out to me and telling me they are actually seeing ashes on the ground now. The place is getting foggy. Folks in Union Island, in the Southern Grenadines, since yesterday been reporting to us that they start receiving ashes also. So this is much more powerful. For instance, I have a brother who was in the red zone. I spoke to him, and he got out yesterday, and he told me there are folks who he spoke to, other folks who was in that region, and saying visibility was down to 0. They can hardly see anything. So this is much more worse than we had in 79. And living through 79, I know how it was. So I could just imagine what this one is like.
Right. Now, Pastor, let us segue into your charity and the work that your charity has always been doing. It's perennial work, and I got to know you through my journalistic work in Brooklyn, New York, and even some of my own humanitarian work as well in helping my alma mater in Grenada. And so we cross paths that way. But could you tell us about the work of your charity with respect to how it will be mobilizing support for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and what can we expect to hear from you in the next coming days and weeks?
Well, right now, as I'm speaking to you, I just received some information from the folks on the ground who was trying to join us, but because of power outage, they can't. So they're sending us some video, which I'll be sending to you pretty soon. They are actually in shelter working. We have folks on the ground where we are preparing food for the folks and providing meal for them. So we're providing 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at this point. We are also in St. Matthias headquarters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We had folks who went there this morning collecting toothbrush, toothpaste, clothes, and all other things, toiletries, whatever we have there in stock, even books, book bags, because you have children in the camp and they're going to need to keep them busy and occupied. So whatever supplies you have there, we're distributing all the supplies to the camp. We also have other supplies there that they're distributing everything that's on the ground, clothes, shoes. We had in February, we shipped a lot of PPEs to the Ministry of Health. We shipped masks, gloves, gongs, etc., eye goggles, because we was anticipating that this might take place. We also did a mission in St. Vincent in 2020, and that was a medical mission due to the coronavirus, the pandemic. We took a lot of PPEs specifically addressing that issue. But as I said, we ship other PPEs. We're preparing for the eruption. And right now we're getting ready. So what we're doing right now, because of the immediate need on the ground, we are preparing meals for the camp that we are, the shelter that we're dealing in right now. The last count, and the count continue to grow. I got a number of 93 last night, and I expect it will grow because people continue to come in into the shelter, because as they mark other areas to evacuate, you might be in an area and it's a safe area, but because of the intensity of the eruption, you have moved to other locations. So we are expecting quite naturally that there will be much people moving into shelters. We are also ready and preparing to ship food from here, because we are preparing, thinking that there will be a shortage in supplies on the ground itself, because right now we know the airport are closed due to the eruption of the volcano, and as the Prime Minister said, there are other countries that are donating stuff, but we know the government cannot do everything alone. Even in this country that we are in the US, you have other organizations like us and others who normally come in and help to assist. And
Okay.
as an organization,
yes, Pastor. So what we want to segue into, and then I'm going to bring in the ambassador again, is to people in the New York area, people in the New
yes,
Jersey area,
yes,
people in upstate New York, maybe Pennsylvania, who want
yes,
to donate to the charity.
yes,
I would also encourage you to send me those links as well. But could you tell us
absolutely.
where can they go at this point? How
Right
would you be
now,
collecting?
Right now, because of the immediate need, and we are feeding on the ground, we're asking folks, we know due to the pandemic and in terms of getting there right now, we are asking folks to donate to St. Matthias Charities Inc. website. And also we are preparing to start to ship from this Tuesday food, so that they will have that food, let's say within the next 2 to 3 weeks on the ground. Our website is stmci.org, that's St. Matthias Charities Inc.org, stmci.org. So one can go there
Okay,
and
so
donate.
at this point, monetary donations is
Yes,
what would be welcomed. Okay.
yes,
All right. Very well. And let me bring in and then we go. We almost out of time for this first segment, but I'm going to bring back the ambassador here, and we're going to have a conversation around regionalism, because one of the things I really respect and admire about your work, Pastor McBarnett, is the fact that you also send containers to Grenada all the time.
that's correct.
And I remember when the Consul General at the time in New York contacted me about your work. I'm like, well, so this Vincentian brother is sending items to Grenada all the time, So, so let us talk about that kind of solidarity, and what our people should be reflecting on at this time.
Yes, we also work in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. In 2015, we made a mission into Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. In 2019, we did another medical mission into Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and continue. Actually, I contacted the Consul General to Canada a few weeks ago, because we have a lot of medical was slated for Grenada and was getting ready to meet with him on the 19th of this month. But due to the eruption now, that actually definitely will take backstage, and we know that the eruption, we have to give that priority. So we also work in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. From 2012 to now, we took 12 40-foot containers into St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Twice, we took 2 40-foot containers into St. Vincent at the same time. We did that twice. In 2020, even during the pandemic, we made a mission into St. Vincent and the Grenadines in October into November. That mission was geared towards the pandemic. So it was a medical mission with mostly PPEs and things that the health system need for that mission. And then when we got back, we sent, since we got back, we sent over $10,000 worth of dialysis solutions for dialysis, and we also sent in the PPEs anticipating the eruption of the La Soufriere. We was also getting ready to do a medical mission into St. Vincent. We was looking to donate over 1,200 school bags into St. Vincent and Grenadines. And it's so ironic that those stuff already on the ground. So we are able to tap into that now due to the eruption and get book bags and books and whatever school supplies they need to get into camps to give to school children in those camps. So those stuff is already on the ground, and we are asking the folks on the ground who our members to distribute to camps that need to shelters that need school supplies.
Absolutely. Pastor McBarnett, thank you so much for appearing on the Bub Report. We will continue to communicate and be in touch. We worked together in the past, and it's so good to see you again. I can't say how much I'm really excited to see you. So we will be in touch, Pastor, and you have a good day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Okay. Let me bring in the ambassador for some closing comments. Ambassador, again, regionalism, right? At this time, I think it's so crucial and so important. Ambassador, can you hear me? Yeah, you need to unmute your mic there.
Thanks. I thought you were going to unmute me. Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
right.
Kellon. Regionalism. You will have seen that when the Prime Minister spoke about the support that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is receiving from our regional brothers and sisters, that he became very emotional. You know, as a region, we always remain in solidarity with one another. We have to be our brothers' keepers. There is strength in numbers. And the love, support, and solidarity of our regional brothers and sisters is evident now more than ever. We have offers from our neighboring countries to host the people who have been displaced from their homes. And the support is entirely overwhelming. We have support for sheltering our nationals in other countries. We have support for the medium and long-term rehabilitation and rebuilding. We also will get support, the technical support that we need for rehabilitating and rebuilding. And we also will need support for the conservation and restoration of our resources, our water resources, for example. So, in a word, the regional support is overwhelming. Regionalism is alive, it is well, it is strong, it is more vibrant than ever. It will ensure our survival.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Gilchrist, thank you so much. I know that this is a very busy time for you, and I will be following up with you so as to get those links, those vital links for people to be able to donate and support and offer whatever resources they can at this difficult time. Thank you. Okay, folks, stand by. We will be coming back with an expert meteorologist to speak to the atmospheric conditions and how that is impacting the Eastern Caribbean at this time.
In 1902, prior to the eruption, this area here, which is now jungle and buried, you could still see some of the ruins around, was once the center of a thriving community where you had sugar plantation around, and it was sugar cultivation was one of the mainstay at the time of the island. In 1902, the eruption happened, and it essentially produced pyroclastic density currents that came down the Wallabu River, and the lower end of them got to this sugar mill, burnt it, destroyed everything, and since then it's essentially been taken over by the jungle. Now these areas are important because they show us not only the impact of the volcano, because now of course what you had as a thriving part of the economy has now changed and hasn't been recovered, but also they're important because the deposits that are essentially trapped by this ruin are areas that people who study the volcano would come to understand better the eruptions that happened in the past. So one of the things that we would do when we come here is look for layers of deposits that could tell us something about how the 1902 eruption has evolved. And there are actually areas where it seems that some of the 1902 deposits are still preserved. The question that we have perhaps in looking at a site like this is whether or not it has actually been disturbed or not. Because what we're trying to do is to find areas where the deposit hasn't been disturbed in any way. And what that helps us to do is determine how the events evolved from that day when the 1902 eruption first started, which explosions created what kind of deposit. We really need to find places where it's well preserved. And this is potentially one of the areas that you could have that still exists, certainly in terms of 1902. So 1902 in the scale of Soufriere is perhaps not one of the biggest eruptions, but it's certainly one of the most significant ones in historical times. It means that if we have one of these kinds of eruptions in the future, areas like this where I'm standing would certainly be inundated by pyroclastic flows. It would be places that people certainly would have to be evacuated from. You'd have a lot of ash. It would be an area where the vegetation would be killed, where there'd be a lot of destruction. But it also means that if you have something that is a little bigger than that, the impact is going to that it had 1902 had here would then potentially reach further afield.
And that was Professor Richard Robertson of the UE Seismic Research Center. And I posted on my social media earlier this week how pleased and impressed I was with the level of research and the level of accuracy with which the seismologists and volcanologists were able to predict this explosive event and to be able to evacuate people in time. And so I'm happy to be joined by Dr. Uracilla Joseph, who is the director of the Seismic Research Center in Trinidad and Tobago from the St. Augustine campus, I believe. Ms. Joseph, thank you so much for appearing on the Burb Report. You were here in January, and we were having this conversation about predictability, right? And here we are today. And as we say, the chickens have come home to roost. I'm also joined by Mr. Wayne Williams. He is a meteorologist. Should I say retired, Mr. Williams?
Well, I don't know if I think that I'm still practicing as a meteorologist, maybe not employed in the government service.
Okay, right. Yes, absolutely. So the reason I brought you folks in, but Dr. Joseph, I want to start with you. On the ground, we know that there's been a recent explosive event this morning. Would you say that this particular explosive event, these series of explosive events that have been taking place since Friday, would be much more intense than what we saw in 1979? And are you also predicting that this might be really prolonged?
So can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Yes, please proceed.
Okay. So there are two things to think about. The 1979 eruption compared to this one, it's very different. It's different in character. This event is showing what we're calling similar type of activity called like subplinian, and that means the explosive components like the ash and the venting is going preliminary straight up vertically, not horizontally, meaning that there are very little so far flows down the flanks of the volcano spreading out to the surrounding areas. But most of the activity has been in the form of venting straight up, that's generating a lot of ash. Whereas some of the previous eruptions, the bigger components, was in the form of the pyroclastic density currents and surges, so as well as some ash component, but not as big as what we're seeing now. So it's a kind of a, I don't want to say reverse, but it's different.
So it's different in that sense. Now, earlier in our program, we had a gentleman from the island of Montserrat. Now, with respect to predictability, are you able to predict with any kind of certainty what the period would be for this particular explosive event?
No, we can't predict anything in terms of the length of time and how things could develop. All we can do at the moment is look at the incoming data and make our best interpretations of what is happening and what can happen. But these things are on a short time scale, because that is just the way that this dynamic system, volcanoes, evolve. The activity evolves in a it's not like a hurricane where it could track for weeks and days and then move the course as necessary. This is something that's coming from deep within the earth, and it's only the seismic signals we can interpret it, and it's a very different time scale we're looking at. We're looking at hours, minutes to hours versus days.
Now, in terms of pyroclastic flows, what we saw in Montserrat with respect to pyroclastic flows, and then there was some lava flows. Obviously, there is a difference there, a distinction to be made there. But can you predict if there would be any kind of pyroclastic flows or any kind of lava flow based on the material we're seeing?
Okay, but remember, Kellen, that the eruption started at the end of December with the growth of a lava dome, right? Now, so this could be considered a type of lava flow, although the thing is it did not reach very far because of the type of magma, the type of lava that we have in the Caribbean, which is more viscous and sticky as compared to the basaltic types that's seen in Iceland and in other areas where it's more runny. So in terms of the flows, it's a very, very slow flow that formed that dome that was existing prior to the explosion started on the 10th. So in terms of the progress of what's happening now, it can be that we'll continue to see these venting episodes happening regularly. It could be that it could be broken up, in time by periods of extrusion again, followed by explosions. So it can happen. It can happen that we might have some dome growth again starting with a pause and then reactivity, or it could continue going the way that it's going, but with longer breaks in between. That was answering one of your questions. You had another one that I missed?
I was just talking about the pyroclastic flows.
The pyroclastic flows.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've been able to confirm at least one pyroclastic flow. It was detected by it was imaged actually by some citizens who were on a boat offshore. I can't tell you the exact area where they were and where it was filmed, but our geologist on island and team leader, Prof. Robertson, he got the footage from a former head of the Soufriere monitoring unit, Ms. Samuels, and she shared it with us from her contacts who are still on island and who had access to this video. And it does look like there were some pyroclastic fluids happening, but towards the ocean.
And at this point, I'm sure you would probably be doing much more monitoring where that is concerned as well. And let me bring in Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, welcome back again. Now, we are seeing significant ash flows, right? We're seeing Barbados, for example, is being blanketed with ash. Some parts of Grenada, they're also reporting ash. In St Vincent, St Vincent at this point is pretty much covered in ash. I'm sure the Grenadine Islands as well. But from an atmospheric and meteorological perspective, I'm trying to understand. Now, I'm not sure if you were around, but I'm not sure if you were monitoring the ash cloud cover from the Montserrat volcano. But what can we learn from that period if, in fact, you were?
Well, I didn't monitor it as closely. And one of the main reasons for that is that the amount of information that is available now that we can go online and click on a site and see exactly what is going on in real time, that was not available at the time. So we are now all able, not just the experts, not just the specialists in the field, but even the layman can go on to the internet, can go onto the appropriate sites. And now with social media, everyone is posting that information. So it's easier now to really monitor what is happening with the ash. And because this volcano is spewing out a lot more ash and vertically into the atmosphere, that is being carried by the upper level winds. And that is what is determining the direction in which the ash would travel. Now, the very lighter particles in that ash cloud wouldn't be spewed so high up into the atmosphere, so it will remain lower, and it is that we're seeing drifting southwards, because it's not being caught up in the upper level winds that are moving from southwest to northeast. So the heavier.
So those upper level winds are taking a vast majority of those heavy particles eastward toward Barbados, and that's why we have.
East,
Okay.
right, east and north. No, so they will see the heavier particles, but they're going to be lighter particles that will remain below those upper level winds, and that is what we are seeing drifting into our area. Now, on this photo that you have up here, which is very recent, I think every 15 minutes there is
refreshes.
a new refreshes, and we can see there has been another explosive. There's been another explosion of ash, and that is heading again towards Barbados. Now, upper level winds since yesterday on Saturday, they are a bit lighter, but we're seeing that ash cloud heading towards Barbados. If you just zoom out a bit, we can see if we look down towards Grenada, towards Tobago, we can see some very light ash there. So that is what we are experiencing. It has settled on vehicles. People get up this morning, the balconies, the vehicles, and so almost and you can see the evidence of that ash. But in Barbados, and especially of course in St Vincent, they're going to get heavier particles, and it will be much more dense.
Now, with respect to the wind direction, that can change at any time.
Well, not necessarily at any time. There's a strong flow at the upper level. So there are prevailing winds, and then of course it will weaken, it will strengthen, and so on. So the upper level winds are more or less prevailing from west to east at this time of the year, right? Of course it changes sometimes, right? So we have hurricanes developing, and sometimes they don't, and so on. So but yes, it could change, and if it changes, then the direction of the ash flow would change with it.
Now, with respect to aviation advisories, what role do meteorologists play in advising aviation at this time? Because I imagine they were speaking about these very heavy particles. And I remember in the volcanic eruption that occurred in Iceland, which was probably much more intense than this, but a lot more intense, but you still had that level of ash in the atmosphere and rocks and things like that, and particles, heavy particles. And so they had to shut down air traffic across the pond, if you will.
Right.
Correct. Now, what happens? What advice would meteorologists be giving the aviation community at this time?
Well, the boat communities usually work very closely, so they will be advising the aviation community on what to expect and what is actually happening. In 2010, when the eruption we referred to in Iceland, I can't pronounce the name of the volcano, but it was so dense that even across in Europe, air traffic was disabled for a while. There was a smaller one in 2011. It did not have that much of an effect because there wasn't that much ash associated with it. But the way that these two organizations will work together will be the meteorologists and the Met establishment will be advising the aviation community, working together with them to determine what action should be taken, where flights should be cancelled, because a jet engine cannot operate in those conditions.
Yes, and let me bring back the director of the seismic center, and your seismic center has been given tremendous credit for saving life and limb. Yes, during this period in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Obviously, in the 1979 eruption, that kind of accuracy and that ability to predict down to a T, if you will, was not there. So the question I want to ask you is, with respect to, can you just take us into what your monitoring looks like to be able to predict, if that question makes sense, to be able to predict that kind of accuracy with what we witnessed Thursday into Friday?
Well, I wouldn't really call it a prediction, but what we do give is our best probabilities. We can't really predict, but we could give the best advice based on what we're seeing. So our main tool is the seismicity, because as most people would have known from all of the advisories that we shared prior to the explosion started yesterday, was that we were seeing very little in terms of deformation, and deformation was the ground, it's ground movement of or changes in the shape and size of the volcano itself. So very little ground deformation was seen. Primarily, the response of this volcano was in relation to the seismicity. So we were heavily dependent on the 8 seismic stations that were on island and operating at the time. And we still are, although we've lost the summit station, obviously, because the explosion, that's the station that would have been closest to the dome. And of course, with it, the camera, so there's nothing up there. And there was a ground deformation station up there as well. So we're no longer receiving data from that station. So it's everything so the other station, in terms of the ones that are around the flanks of the volcano, these are the ones now, and further out are the ones that we're depending on, given what's happening with the ash, the ash fall. Remember, these stations are powered by solar panels, and there's ash fall accumulating on the solar panels, and some of the stations are higher up on the flanks of the volcano. So in terms of risk, we still can't get to these, and we just have to hope that they hold out somewhat until things calm down, because we cannot send our team into these high risk areas. So right now the primary tool is the seismicity. We're using satellite imagery to help keep calm, because remember, we're blind because of the amount of ash. Our team at Belmont, we cannot see. Normally when it's clear, we could actually see the volcano. But now, because of all the ashfall, visibility is limited to like less than 1 kilometer at a time, but not even. So we cannot actually see it with our eyes. So
Right.
we're depending on the satellite imagery as well as the seismicity heavily now.
Now, in the Belmont Observatory, in relation to the volcano, is the Belmont Observatory in the red zone?
Yeah, it's on the fringes of the red zone. Yes.
On the fringes of the red zone. Okay, so it straddles between the red and the yellow zone there.
Correct.
Okay. And so now that you said you lost one of your seismic monitoring tools, equipment at the base, right, of the volcano there. At the summit, I'm sorry, at the summit of the volcano. What contingency plans have you given thought to?
In terms
of being able to continue to monitor.
So we continue just using what equipment we still have streaming, which are the other stations that are further away. They can still get the signals, but the ones that was closest to the volcano, we no longer have that one as a backup. And as I said before, we can't go in anytime soon to replace or repair. We just have to maintain the ones that are, or try to get to the ones that are further out of harm's way.
Okay.
And keep these operational. But remember, there's redundancy. So we have the team on island in St Vincent, but remember, everything is supported by the SRC in Trinidad, because primarily the data actually comes into Trinidad and it's joined to the stream at Belmont. It feeds into the Belmont station. So either way, there are redundancies built into the system, being supported by the communications people on island, meaning Digicel and Flu. So they are working closely with us to try to keep these internet connections and so on up and running continuously. If anything falls back, they will help to keep it going. So that these
Any
stream
Dr.
is interrupted. Sorry.
Right, that's okay. Any final thoughts? Any final words? We will be relying on you. And again, thank you for accommodating. I know this is a very busy time for you, so I appreciate
Yes,
the
thank you
time
very
you're
much.
taking to give us.
So
Yes.
I would like to say is that people please keep following the official sources of information. We've already had several episodes, to deal with several, fake news. I'm sorry to call it, but it has, people sharing
Misinformation.
stuff,
Yeah.
misinformation, because people are spreading things about Kikem Jenny and Grenada and even Soufriere in Martinique, Soufriere in Guadeloupe, and then Martinique Pele. Lots of misinformation being shared and not verified, and people are then sharing. The whole train continues with people sharing misinformation without checking. So it can cause a lot of panic and unnecessary, unhappiness, with people who are living in these
Anxiety. Yeah.
islands.
Anxiety.
Anxiety,
Yeah.
correct. That's the proper word. For
Yeah.
people who are trying to physically deal with this situation now.
And just so we clear, these volcanoes, they're not connected in the way that it
No,
would cause a domino effect. We had the
correct.
Montserrat volcano that had no impact on Kikimjani or
No,
Soufriere and St Vincent. So
no.
can you just speak to that, please? Because
Yeah,
I
so
think that is a major talking point that needs to be
point.
developed.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, these volcanic systems are not linked. There's no long channel of plumbing systems that links one to the other, where activity at one triggers a response in the other. We do sit in a similar type of plate tectonic setting, and subduction is occurring, and there are similarities in behavior and so on, because we share the same type of geology and as I said before, plate tectonic setting, but the individual volcanoes are fed by their own magmatic systems.
Dr. Joseph, thank you so much. And we will continue to communicate and ensure that we are here at the Burb Report are sharing verified information directly from the Seismic Research Unit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, absolutely. And Mr. Williams, I'm going to bring you in for some final thoughts and comments here. As a meteorologist, this eruption is unprecedented in many respects. Would you say?
Yes, in a way, but it did give sufficient notice that something was going to happen, and that is why we were able to people were able to prepare to the extent that it would. It wasn't like it happened in '79 when it was out of the blues, right? So in terms of monitoring, now since those eruptions in '79 and also the one in 2010 in Iceland, there have been tremendous strides in improvement in monitoring these activities, and especially so with satellites. We now have geostationary satellites that send information to us every 15 minutes, so we can keep updated, not just in terms of forecasting whether ash, not only in terms of seeing the intensity, not only that, but also in terms of nowcasting in the short run. So we can forecast or we can nowcast what is going to happen in the next, let's say, 2 hours, in the next 6 hours, and so in the short term. So it is much better now in terms of information spread. And as Dr. Joseph say, of course, it is making it worse in that people, I don't know if they're just looking for attention or just want to be the one to get information out.
The likes.
I guess so. It's lots of misinformation, but we have to understand that what you have on the screen there is real. There is a huge plume of ash heading towards Barbados. And remember early on when we first signed on and we were discussing this photo, it was a very small plume. Look at where it has gotten in
Now
a few hours.
it has expanded.
Right? So
And just to give viewers context, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
right.
This map is updated every 15 minutes, and it
Exactly.
goes back to the advances in satellite technology.
Right.
Please
So
proceed.
that the experts can now calculate at what time that this plume is going to begin to affect Barbados. So people in Barbados can start preparing, or they could intensify their preparation for it. Also, as you're scrolling here now, the lighter just to the east. So we can see how it is trailing out with the winds. If you scroll down to the area around Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, we see how that lighter ash is spreading. So we'll be able to see, using satellite technology, if we can expect denser ash to begin affecting us. So it gives us much more preparation time for these activities. So that is a main improvement that has occurred in tracking these activities in the last maybe 10, 15, 20 years, advent of the improvement in satellite technology.
Mr. Williams, any closing thoughts from you before we get to the next segment?
Well, it just shows that not just in terms of hurricane, as a meteorologist, I will tend to monitor hurricanes more, but it shows that the Caribbean is still an area that is prone to these natural disasters. So we have to be prepared for all of these. We have a situation in Grenada, even though we do not have what we consider active volcanoes, but there are signs of volcanicity. We have the hot water springs and so on. So all of these are signs of volcanicity. No volcano has erupted in Grenada in recent memory. We could say maybe in historical time. We do have Kikamjini, but that is a different type of eruption than what is happening on in St Vincent right now, because as Dr. Joseph said, there are different types of flows. For example, in Hawaii, you have a different type of lava flow than what we have in now, right? So we have to make sure that we don't live in a state of panic, but that we are prepared to an extent to move into a greater level of preparedness for disasters in the Caribbean.
I'm sure you were a scout, Mr. Williams. Were you a scout? If you were not a scout, that's unforgivable.
I was a Cubs, but then when I got to scout, I said, I had no time for that.
Did you attend the GBSS, sir?
Of course.
My sympathies to you.
Okay, I know how to respond to you next time you ask me an interview. Keep up the good work you're doing, man.
Levity. You need some levity in these times. But thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you so much for appearing on the Bub Report at this very critical time. And, the Caribbean, we are confronting a series of crises. This is happening in the middle of a global public health pandemic, which makes this very difficult. And so what we want to do is that we want to segue into our next segment, where we will be, speaking of crises, we'll be bringing in the leader of the opposition of the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, the Honorable Tobias Clement, to speak to, again, some issues that are occurring in the trial and state. And so what we will do, let us take a quick break here. And of course, viewers and listeners, we also want to hear from you. We want to get your comments in the comment section and just get your reaction and responses to what we have been hearing here this morning on the Bub Report. Do stand by. We will be right back.
Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
Now, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional.
But why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing socio-economic issues that I would want to address with you.
In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bub Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bub Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
And welcome back, folks. We have a comment here coming in from Jose Onesto, who is saying, according to Robertson, the flows happen every 120 minutes to 3 hours and can go on for the next few days to weeks. Some areas regain power, but Venlec, which is the electricity service provider in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, is working extremely hard to give everyone back their power at this hour. And so let me take this opportunity to welcome the Honorable Tobias Clement. Mr. Clement, welcome to the Burb Report again. And first, let me take this time on behalf of our production team to extend our deepest condolences to you on the passing of your mom.
Good afternoon,
Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Bob, and thank you very much. And good day, good afternoon, good morning, some places to your listeners. And thank you very much, because it has been indeed a very difficult time when anybody lose family members, much so your mom or your siblings. It is a difficult time, and I want to thank the public in general, you and the diaspora, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, for extending to me that sense of support that is so necessary, and it is still necessary because it is as fresh as even as yesterday. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can relate to what you're feeling. I lost my mom at a very young age as well. I was only 19 when I lost my mom. I don't talk about my personal life on the Burb Report, but it's something that is difficult. It is a very difficult loss.
Yes.
So yes, so I definitely empathize with you on that score. And so, Mr. Clement, we will segue into the issues. And first off the bat is concerns of your sister island community with respect to the Harvey Vale jetty.
Well, even before we go there, maybe I too might want to extend my thoughts and prayers to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I too do have family in St. Vincent, sisters and cousins and so forth. I do have family in St. Vincent. I have been in contact with them, and contact with my family in Petit Martinique and Carriacou, because you know that there's ashfall there also. And for those people who are listening, I maybe I was thinking that Mr. Williams would have mentioned this, because yesterday I called some of my family members and let them put the word out, because in all of the Grenadine Islands, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, we have this rainwater for drinking. And we had to ask them to disconnect the spouting because the roofs were covered with ash, and you do not want, if it rains, then that ash goes into the cistern or into the catchment area, because the water would be contaminated. It will not be any good. I would advocate, even besides COVID-19, that people should continue to wear masks. I mean, the volcano erupted, you have the ash there. You might have been hearing that people are smelling sulfur. Yes, sulfur is given off there, but it is known that sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide can be formed. And when these are dissolved in rainwater, you can form sulfuric acid, sulfurous acid. So the rain that falls in the immediate time would be acidic. But much more so, we have just seen the ashfall, and we might be talking about the ashfall and it looked like sand or so. But I do foresee that a lot of vegetation will be destroyed. We're talking about crops and animals would be affected in a serious way. Immediately in St. Vincent, in Barbados, in the Grenadine Islands, you would see that some of the leaves on some of the vegetation, people, agricultural crops would probably, some of it will be destroyed. So the effect would be felt far beyond St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, and especially people that suffers from respiratory problems. You venture outside, you must wear masks. I got up this morning, and when I went outside, I saw the vehicle windscreen, and the vehicle was covered in ash. Imagine you're outside and you're breathing this thing in, you might feel a little burning sensation. It is because there is a little bit of acidity there. So one must be cognizant of the fact that, please, you have to follow those protocols even when it comes to volcanic activity. And for those people in the Grenadine Islands especially, where rainwater harvesting is so necessary, especially in the little dry season, you do not want to leave your spouting on the house, on the catchment area, so that you would spoil your drinking water that you
Water
have.
supply. Yeah, you
Yes.
know, that is some very important information and some very good context. And you know, with respect to Carriacou, I know that Carriacou and Petit Martinique can get very dry. You know, and
Well,
desalination.
yeah, you
Go ahead.
remember I am from that area, and I was
Yeah.
a child when the volcano in St Vincent erupted, and I can remember that they were people were disconnecting the spouting in Petit Martinique and in Carriacou, and sweeping off the ash, and but you do not want it to contaminate your only source of drinking water.
Yeah, and you know, speaking, obviously, we'll get back to the Harveyville question, but speaking, you mentioned, you know, the agricultural um, uh, impacts of this volcanic eruption, and Senator Sinclair made the same point with respect to how we are going to ensure that we can perhaps fill in the gap, that the void that would be created in St. Vincent now with respect to our crops and so on. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, even yes, we would like to fill in the gap, but I think to 10, that would depend on heavy or how heavy the ashfall might be, because if the ashfall is heavy in Grenada or Carriacou or Petit Martinique and it is very acidic, then what you may have the plant material in Grenada to probably some of it might die. So it's something that is unfolding, and let us see probably after the rain falls, or if it is washed off the leaves and no damage is done to the leaves or to the crops, then we might be able to fill in the gap and help St. Vincent, because I know the amount of ashfall that we have seen in St. Vincent in the immediate vicinity and around St. Vincent, probably you could call it in terms of agriculture a total loss for St. Vincent. And we might expect some here in Grenada too, maybe not in the as the very, very intense impact as it is in St. Vincent, but one has to look and see what is going on. So, you know, your heart have to continue to go out to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the surrounding areas. And it seems too that Barbados may have a very heavy ash fall. And when that happens, the agricultural impact, the health impact, it too has health impact implications on those islands.
And we have some comments coming in here. Colin Batiste says, I don't know if any information was released prior to the eruption, but I haven't seen any information on tips on how to stay safe. Bob Marisher is saying, yes, Mr. Clement, you can expect acid rain on the vegetation, which in the long term will cause problems. Colin is asking, is it possible that farmers could have covered their crops to prevent damage from ashfall? Again, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because it is like for me, I do some farming. So when I got up this morning, I have some storage capacity. So I put on the sprinkler system to wash off all the ash that was on the plant, because when I survey, I saw a lot of ash. But then a lot of farmers do not have that facility. And probably I would call on the powers that be to put out I didn't even hear from NAGMA. Maybe they did something, but yes, tips on how to behave during this time, because my family here, I told them, if you do not have to get outside today, do not go outside. If you're venturing outside, please wear a mask. In a case like this too, I would tell people that if, for instance, you're venturing outside and it rains, do not get wet in the you know, the Grenadians don't like rain, so don't get wet in the rain, because yes, the rain will be if there is a ash there and there is sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide in the atmosphere, we will expect some acid rain. You might develop rash or so. If you're suffering from you have any kind of breathing problems, asthma, whatever, you do not want to go outside without a breathing apparatus. And if you do, I would say always keep those inhalers, because yes, outside is whitish. It is, you can see that there is something in the air. So people must be keep safe. And like I said to the people of the Grenadines, especially where the rainwater is being harvested, disconnect your spouting and make sure that you do not let any water from the roofs at this point in time goes into your system, because it will remain there and it will be acidic, and who knows what else contaminant that there will be beside just being acidic. And so you do not want that to you do not want to ingest that, because it can have long-term effect on your health system. So yes, I do believe that that tip should be given.
And so, Mr. Clement, let us segue into the issues now, which, again, to be fair, I didn't think you dodged the question at all. But given
No, I did not.
The spirit of the times, given the
Times,
spirit
yeah, yes,
of the time, I
most
think
definitely.
as leader of the opposition, I think it would be imperative for you to address those issues as well. So the issues in Carriacou, some business men and you've reached out to me. To express concern about what is happening in Harveyville there. Have you been in contact with individuals on the sister island?
Well, I have been, and if you know, it was a point that I was raised in Parliament, and I raised it on air a number of times, and that I think the issue with Harveyville is not what is happening in Harveyville, but what has gone on in terms of in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique. And again, Mr. Bob, we have so much to deal with at this point in time, and I think even on your program, I will too want to express my condolences to the Nimrod family. So, former MP passed just the day after my mom passing, and I know that that he was Carriacou and Petit-Martinique for 20-something years. So again, that is there. But what really is affecting Carriacou and Petit-Martinique in terms of the businesses now is the movement of the main port, as it were, from Hillsborough to Harveyville. Now, remember, the port that was in Harveyville was developed in Hillsborough was developed over 200 years ago, I think almost 240 years ago. And it was more, and so you have the port there, and the city of Hillsborough, the town of Hillsborough was built around that port and the port facility. Now you take it and you move it to Harveyville, and so the business now in Hillsborough has dried up. I mean, yes, we put COVID on top of this, and now we see now that the amount of commerce that Hillsborough as a city would not have it. Now, in my argument, I said to them that I do not have a problem with the port facility in Harveyville, but what I would want to see and what would breathe life into the Hillsborough community is that if a port facility is re-established in Hillsborough, and it seems that that is not in the making. And what is the difference between Hillsborough and Harveyville in terms of if you have to develop a city in Harveyville around that port facility now, you would need land, you would need space, and that is not there. Remember that the port in Harveyville is hedged on one side by the oyster bed reserve. It is hedged on one side by the docks that is established there. On the other side of the road is private property. So you do not have no room for development of say a city. So it comes at a certain cost to businesses that everything now would have to be transported from Harveyville to Hillsborough. Not only that, usually the ferry would run and they would come to Harveyville. If say you're from Petit-Martinique, usually you would stop off in Hillsborough and just take the boat and go to Petit-Martinique. Now you would have to take a bus from Harveyville to catch the boat from in Hillsborough or to go to Windward. I remember before my mom passed, she used to be with me in Grenada all the time. And before, when she went up, she said to me, you know, Toby, I will not be coming back to Grenada because it's so much of a hassle. She said, imagine I took all this thing from Grenada, and because of her age, when she got to Hillsborough, the boat had already left. So she had to get her things again from one bus now, went on the dock, no boat, get it on another bus now to go to Windward. And she said it is so difficult to travel from Grenada to Pitimocknick in terms of transiting. And if you're a certain age and you cannot hustle, you might just miss that trip. And so it has become very difficult for the people of Pitimocknick, for the people of Windward, for the people, because Hillsborough was kind of central. From Hillsborough, you could just go everywhere. But Harveyville is towards the southern end, and you would have to take one or two transport. Because, for instance, if you come to if you from Windward and you come to Harveyville, you'd have to take one bus from Harveyville to Hillsborough, and then take another bus from Hillsborough to Windward. Likewise, if you go to Pitimocknick, you'd have to take a bus from Harveyville to Hillsborough, from Hillsborough to Windward, and then take a boat again from Windward to Pitimocknick, when you could have just get off the Osprey in Hillsborough and take the other boat to go to Pitimocknick. It is time consuming, and it is a real hassle. And not only that, but in terms of the livelihood of businesses, I have stayed in Hillsborough during last year, and I've looked and see the nightlife in Hillsborough is gone. The amount of commerce in Hillsborough is gone, and so people are just at an edge in terms of new businesses to be established in Hillsborough. It would be very difficult. I do not see them getting a customer used to it as it is. After you have operated around a port for over 200 years, how is it? Look at any city or any port facility in the world, and you would see that is the lifeline of most countries where the port facilities are. And without that port facility, Hillsborough is becoming a ghost town.
And have you brought this issue up with the member of parliament? I know that again there were consultations held.
I have brought it up, and she stated emphatically, and she stated clearly in Parliament that there will never be another port established in Carriacou, because it is a question that I had asked in Parliament, and I had asked for the answer, and I got the answer both verbally and written. If I knew that you were going to ask me these questions this morning, I would have read out her response to you. But what I can do, I can always find it and send it to you, that in her response to me asking about how.
Or I can always check the parliamentary Hansard, I'm sure.
Yes, and you could always check it online too, that she responded to say that a port facility in Hillsborough will not be re-established as is. What she mentioned is that the fisheries is going to do a little jetty for the fishing purpose, but it is sad though, because what we have to do, we have to be fortuitous enough to think that let us not reverse the process, but let us build and expand the process in terms of development. And in my judgment, her response was not one that looked towards the future, but look towards, okay, it is done and it is done. And I do not see them correcting it in the near future, not anytime soon.
And let us segue into the protracted dispute between government and unions. Some have said that they haven't heard much from you with respect to either lending solidarity or speaking or giving voice. Obviously, I know that you lost, your mom.
Well, just around the time, yes, it is true that I have kept quiet. I think the last Parliament I mentioned that I was not going to say anything on it, but since then I had done a couple interviews, and with you today again, I dare to say that I'm looking at the times, and we hear a lot these days. People say what goes around comes around. People remember from 1989 when the teachers struck at that time when it was said that Mr. Blaze has the money, so let them pay the money to the teachers. I think I remember that probably some shares in Cable and Wireless or Grenlec, one of them had to be sold, Cable and Wireless, so that he can pay the teachers whatever was due unto them. Now, we must go back a little bit, and very importantly, sometimes when we are in leadership position, we have to be careful what we say or do. 2 years ago, March, it was the teachers' strike, and somehow along negotiation broke down, and government, I think it went to court. They had lost, and the government deducted the salary from the teachers. And I remember they brought us into the trade center as to explain the whole thing in terms of the striking, and government deducted the salary from teachers. And it was, to me, almost the teachers at that time, they were laughed at. And I could not believe, but the leadership of our country, the prime minister, he came on to speak. I remember who was there at the time, the Minister of Education, which Mrs. Pierre, Honorable Emmeline Pierre, Honorable Oliver Joseph was there also. Myself was there. The program was moderated by Sheldon Scott, and the PS in Finance was there. And when the Prime Minister began to speak, he said that he doesn't want to laugh, but I laugh already. It damn good. I mean, you deduct the salaries from the teachers, and I say, oh my goodness, he just put his foot in his mouth. And then in the middle, when he said it again, I don't want to laugh, but I laugh already. It's damn good. I said, Jesus, I mean, you're talking about people's daily bread here. And in closing, 3 times he said, he made that statement. And, for me, people laugh, but I got up and I left that thing. And it was, to me, that was sad. And so now it is coming back again. Be careful, little mouth, what you say. So, yes, we understand the timing of this salary negotiation, and the 4% for all public workers was negotiated. And probably we are living in very difficult economic times, but sometimes you see, when you act and you behave and you speak like that, then how can the people that you behave towards have empathy or even sympathy towards your understanding? Because when you get a chance to laugh at them, you did laugh at them. I would ask,
but Mr. Clement, no, but Mr. Clement, you bring up empathy here. The argument from the government side is that, as you just said, we are in very difficult economic times.
But I am not
they're
finished
suggesting,
yet. I'm not finished yet. But what I am saying, yes, no, he just said that we talk about difficult economic times, but when you look at it, I do believe that there might be some, but government just purchased Grenlec at $200 and something million. When you put all the costing together, we did not even talk about that yet. Then the announcement—
That's from the capital side of the budget, Mr. Clement. From the capital side of the budget.
Don't you ever sell that, because they have not shown you from the capital.
Not me.
Side
I'm just parroting what the government's talking point is, sir.
What the government talking point was last year too, that this year we would experience 6% growth. Remember that? But not only that, you also hear too that at this point in time they're gonna be looking at putting in traffic lights into Grenada, whether or not the contract is signed as in the sum of $30 million. And you asking yourself, you know what I say? Give the 4%, give 6%. Treat it as a stimulus package, because a lot of Grenada do need a stimulus package. Look at where you're at, Mr. Bob. The stimulus is out. What other incentives is there? Because you have to look because when you look at it, what has happened over the past year is that cost of living in Grenada rose undoubtedly so. The cost of just the basic food items, the cost of energy, the cost of food, the cost of everything went up.
Mm-hmm.
So in that now, will the 4% even equate to the rising cost of living? No, it will not. It will not. So what I say, treat the 4% as a stimulus package, and give the people the 4%. And I'm not saying it, I'm saying this because when you look and see the behavior, it's like you're talking to one side of your mouth, but the action, something else is seen. So you think even before they bought Grenlec, in that time, they did not know that the 4% was coming. Even before they spoke about the $30 million traffic light, you didn't know that was signed in terms of negotiations. So that was signed. So legitimately, so it is signed. And I'm speaking to a few members, what it is that they're not getting any word from government as to how soon that they will get the 4%, or even if a promissory note would be given. But if you negotiate, Mr. Bob, and you negotiate with government, and government now can come back and turn back on the negotiation, then you cannot negotiate with government again. It means, therefore, that in the future, government could do you what they want, when there are circumstances that they feel that they can use to get out of the negotiations in terms of what was signed, sealed, and delivered. I mean, there was one time, I think one of the leaders said that pay me and vex with me. He invented those words, pay me and vex with me. In that time, we have to be careful again. We have to be very careful that we are humans. And sometimes we ought to err on the side of caution. And I remember one old man said, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Because little mouth, what you say, could come back 2 years, could come back 10 years, 30 years, or even 50 years to haunt you.
You are waxing poetic today, Mr. Clement. And so I would segue into another issue. You recently appointed a new senator to the upper house of parliament. I believe that is your third and final appointment.
Yes,
So
yes.
could you tell us about the decision behind appointing that specific senator?
Well, if you look at it, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition is given the choice of 3 senators, and probably maybe that appointment would have gone on a long time ago, because remember initially the 3 were Mrs. Sincere, Mr. Terry Noel, and Miss James. And then remember, Miss James did not take that offer because she was the senator from the NDC who I left in there, and so I had to search long and hard that and look for people that will create an impact, that will contribute to the debate in the Houses of Parliament, not only contribute to the debate of the Houses in Parliament, but will want also to contribute to the development of Grenada as a nation. And so Mr. Joseph was the last appointment. He is a retired teacher, taught for, I think, 37 years, well respected in his community. And so when asked to serve, he did not decline to serve, but I do believe that his time in there, he would serve the people of Grenada and St. John, where he come from, with a sense of pride, with a sense of dignity, and so that we all will be proud of his service, and not only his service, but the service of the other 2 senators and myself as MP in the House, that when it is all said and done, we will be able to walk with our heads up, that knowing that we represent the people which we were called on to represent, and nobody can point fingers at them or at me in that sense of service to our country.
Yes, and as we move along here, Mr. Clement, the NNP is 1 month shy of celebrating. Well, it's 3 months, 3 years and 1 month as being in office. How would you rate the performance of the government during this period? And of course, elections are constitutionally due. We will talk about that next. But would you say at this midterm inflection point has the government done?
Well, politics and rating it, you can do an overview, or you could do almost an immediate. It is almost like volcanic in its activities. It goes almost from day to day, because in some instances a week, a day, or a year could be so different from what you do. In that, how we function as a people, maybe like Kellen, you could do all the good in the world, and then you made a blunder, and that is what goes on
That is
the
the end of your reputation. Yes,
that is what
I
goes
know. I know
on the
this to be
record.
true.
Yes, so and it is almost the same for government, but the feelings in Grenada, even at this point in time, people are talking about how they are feeling now, and the vibes is almost like 1979 before the revolution. Some people are equating it to probably our conditions today. It is worse than when we were in 2008, and you have to look at Grenada and compare Grenada to our neighbors, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, and the strides that Grenada has made or has not made, and ask yourself, can we do better than where we are today? And sometimes me, like I said a while back in the parliament, the first time I heard the word third world or grassroots was from my grandmother, and that probably was in the 70s as a child then. Now we can almost use the same word to describe again our country, third world, grassroots. And I have always asked myself the question, how do you go from one level to another? Do we continue the status quo that we have been going on? And if we continue the status quo, our trajectory wouldn't be the same as the results. I mean, Einstein said if you do something over and over and over and expect a different result, then that is insanity to the highest degree. And I dare say that we must put a serious development plan for our country, and not have a development plan that goes from incumbency to incumbency to incumbency. And I do believe that our people must be brought into the education that we must do better. We have to do better, and to be held, people must be held accountable for what was done or what was not done. And so this is where I have Grenada in terms of NNP that you asked me. Remember, I stayed in that fold for a long time, and yes, I have had
Some
my
might
fair
say that
share.
you were groomed, if you will, by the NNP. That
No,
you're an NNP
no,
protege. Well,
no.
you are, Mr. Clement. You
I am,
you
but
ran as
I
a
have
youthful candidate in Karakou
that
against Mr. Nimrod.
most definitely against Mr. Nimrod, and that's a whole different. That will take a whole program for
It
itself.
will, yes.
Maybe I would not describe myself as being antagonistic, but I am one that over the years, on many occasions, have almost gotten on the wrong side of the powers that be, because I ask the difficult question and I look at it from another point of view. And so maybe I was always found to be antagonistic and to be maybe annoying and to be not in there and not buying or selling it as it is. And I think I would love to look futuristic and to talk about science and to talk about development and to talk about people's upliftment. For me, if Mr. Bob I come and I meet you at one particular level, and I was able to do something to raise you and leave you at a higher level, then my work towards you would have been done. But if I come and I just feed you what you want, and when I leave you, you have to be continue to be fed by somebody else, then my work towards you in terms of making you an independent person would not have been done. And I have always asked question, how can we make people's life better? How can we make people independent? How can we make people more productive? How can we make people to pick themselves up by the bootstrap and move entire families out of poverty to a sense of purpose and to a sense of civicness and a sense of duty and independence towards yourself, towards your family, towards your country. And if you have this in mind, then you would move heaven and earth to make sure that you do the right thing, you ask the difficult question, and you let people be held accountable, so that in the next generation we do not still have to be using the word third world in Grenada or grassroots or you know, that sort of thing. I would love to see that my son do a lot better than I did, and to see that you as a person did better than your parents, and your children would do better than you, and your children's children would always be stepping it up. But if we have a situation in a country where from generations to generation you have the same set of people just recycling the behavior, and you could look at the grandchild and say this was how the grandmother was, or the mother was, or the great grandparents were, then we have not made any strides there. And so in terms of some of the development of our country, we made strides? Some, but is it enough? No, it's not enough. Look, for instance, a few years ago we spent millions of dollars on traffic light. I mean, government come, government go, and we have a thing that we advocate for infrastructure, but infrastructure is never maintained, so that it was any kind of repair or maintenance or development done, it went right down to the ground. And so what we will do, we will order a new set for $30 million. That would go right down to the ground again.
Well,
And then when
Mr.
it is
Clement,
done,
I'm sorry, that $30 million claim, that needs some fact checking, because my sources tell me that agreement was not signed as yet. So
but
again,
that is what is there, because well I did
and we do not know that it's 30 million.
I did some facts checking too, and people in Grenada are concerned. They're concerned that there are many contractors here in Grenada never saw the bidding process, and they're still wondering, how did we come up to $30 million? Are we going to be putting traffic light in every junction in Grenada? I mean, think about it, and so
I don't know. I'm not on the ground in
yes,
Grenada to know.
so it is something that, I mean, that is part of the dialogue now in Grenada, and it makes some people furiously mad, because the truth about it, because of COVID-19, definitely we depended heavily on the tourism sector, on the hotel sector. Now that is not there. I mean, we depended heavily on the foreign students into Grenada, which they say sometimes is 20-25% of our GDP. And we know that unemployment now is right up there. And when you're looking at the difficulties, people that are out of work, people that will be going into foreclosure, we speak to bankers and they tell you, well, they're not even bothering with some people. Whenever they could come back online, they would come back online. But yet, for all, we do not know how long this depressed economy would stay with us, so that we have to be prudent in terms of how and when we spend our finances. So all this must be taken into consideration. And from my point of view, Mr. Bob, you would know that people would call on me, they would confide in me, and they would tell me about some of the hang-ups that they would be having, some of the difficulties they would be having, some of the daily stress that they would be having. And a lot of people in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, even maybe in the United States too, the diaspora are under tremendous stress. And that is just to provide the basic needs for the family. And that is hanging over a lot of people in Grenada head now. That the dollar is not getting where it used to get before COVID. I mean, this is why even the 4%, yes, for some people it would be small, but that 4% might help to pay a bill, because the bill has gotten more expensive. I think just recently we had an 80 cents rise in the gallon of gas. So think about it.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Clement, we are out of time at this point, but certainly we had a good 40 minutes here together. But
Thank you
I will
very
give you the
much.
opportunity. I will give you the opportunity for closing comments. There are a number of issues that we will be addressing in the future that are occurring in Grenada. That I would want to bring you back, and your senators who you have appointed, they have also been very good at accommodating our requests, so we appreciate that. But I will give you the floor for closing comments.
Thank you very much, Kelon, again for having me on. Thank you for expressing to me and my family the condolences. It went a long way, and it will continue to go a long way. And what I say in Grenada now, just recently I was out giving out a few food hampers. We have to continue to be our brother's keeper. And regardless of what you have, how you have it, that we are not in the same boat in terms of haves and have not. And so I would urge people to continue to be your brother's keeper, continue to follow the protocols that are established when it comes to COVID-19. COVID-19 is not yet left us. Even now, added now to the eruption of the volcano in St. Vincent, I would ask people, as long as you're going out there with the atmospheric conditions now, continue to wear masks. I again would call on my brothers and sisters in Carriacou and Petit Martinique to go the extra mile, call on government to give tips for the nation in terms of how to behave in handling the eruption. And well, COVID-19 is out there, and so wearing of mask now should not be if I want to wear it, but because you're inhaling volcanic material, you must wear the mask and protect yourself, protect your family, and do what must be done. So thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. God bless your audience, both in the diaspora and in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, all over the world, that is. Thank
And in
you.
St. Vincent and in the
And
diaspora, we have Vincentians. Pastor McBonnet, again, he's been here listening all along. Pastor,
no, well, yes.
Thank you for staying as well.
You're welcome. And before you go, I would just like to take the time to thank you, Mr. Bob, for the good work that you're doing, and for everyone who is supporting. We will thank you. We thank you and ask you to please reach out and let us help the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, along with Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique.
And Pastor, I will be in touch. You know, if you call me, I'll be up there. You know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're my good brother. Yes, Mr. Clement, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bob, for having me. Thank you, Pastor Barnett. I listened to you this morning also. And again, let's keep all of our people, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, keep them in our thoughts and in our prayers. God bless. God bless you all.
Okay. Panel, thank you so much. This has been a special broadcast of the Bub Report covering the ongoing volcanic eruption and the subsequent humanitarian and natural disaster fallout on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We will be posting links, relevant links for donation, support, and how you can contribute. Again, these will be verified links. Please ensure that you are donating to verified sites. I think it is important that we do that, especially now. We do have scammers out there who might want to take advantage of people's hard-earned monies during this time. So we will be posting verified links on our website in ways that you can give support to our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at this very difficult time. Let me also take the time to thank my producers. I want to thank Sister Margaret Francis in Brooklyn, New York, as well as Brother Kitaka Mawuto in Grenada for really helping us to put this program together. Teamwork makes the dream work. This program is not only about me. It's not about me. It's about service for me. And this program this morning was necessary in terms of ensuring that we can educate our people and inform our people with respect to what is happening out there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We also want to thank the Honorable Tobias Clement for also appearing, and the rest of the panelists. On behalf of all of us here at the Bub Report, we thank you and have a productive week. Let's get to the outro here, and I will see you next week, Sunday. Bye-bye.